Hi, my name is Vanessa, and this video is going to be about a news story about a military veteran who's a whistleblower. The news story started unfolding last year, and there's been many updates since then. It involves a lot of different details, but specifically a long-term care facility, I guess you could call it, for elderly military veterans in certain situations in Boston. The Boston Globe covered it, and anyways, this is it. I discovered of this information by accident on my link on LinkedIn. I'm at LinkedIn at Go Vanessa is my handle. Go Vanessa. So you can look me up there and you can find the information about this news story there as well. I've actually posted quite a lot. I discovered the military veteran who's a lawyer on there. He'd posted about it and I just stumbled upon him by accident. I think it was last night. And then I started reading more and more about it today. So I'm going to go ahead and cover the news article in depth and read the whole thing. It's quite long, so brace yourself. All right, so here it is. Top official at state soldier's home was fired days after bringing safety concerns to state inspector general. And then it says a second official was also terminated after flagging issues. The author of the article is Andrea Estes, global staff. Oh, it looks like it was updated March 2nd, 2022. It might have been published a little bit earlier than that. A public health official chosen to oversee the Holyoke Soldiers' Home after a catastrophic COVID outbreak in 2020 said he was terminated for raising concerns that dangerous disease prevention practices persisted even after the deaths of 76 veterans that spring. Ed Sheehan, who was tapped to identify and fix problems at state-run veterans' home in Holyoke and Chelsea after the Holyoke tragedy, I may be mispronouncing some of this, by the way, alleged in a whistleblower claim that staff continued to place COVID-infected veterans too close to uninfected veterans, a practice that allegedly fueled the original outbreak. Sheehan, which is the name of the military veteran who's also a lawyer, his name's Eric Sheehan. Hopefully I'm not mispronouncing that. He's on LinkedIn. That's how I found him. He became so worried about safety issues that he went to Inspector General Glenn, whose name I cannot pronounce, so I'm going to try the last name. 4 days later, in October 2021, Sheehan was fired by the Secretary of Veterans Services, though it's unclear if his supervisors knew about his visit to the Inspector General. So to me, this sounds like a state-run agency, and there are a lot of military veteran stuff being run by each individual state, which to me is just so confusing. There's no way I could keep track of every single state and what they're doing, but I definitely kind of see different things, and it just looks like a big bureaucratic maze to me. A second official who Sheehan had recruited for a top position at the Chelsea home was dismissed in September, days after flagging safety and staffing problems there. Beth Scheffler, the acting chief nursing officer in Chelsea, also filed a complaint with the Inspector General shortly before she was terminated. Quote, I identified serious problems with the quality of care veterans were receiving and I brought these concerns to my supervisor, end quote, Sheehan said in an interview. And instead of being recognized for my diligence, I was ignored and ultimately terminated, end quote. Sheehan and Scheffler filed a joint whistleblower claim with Attorney General Maura Healey's office this month, the first step toward filing a lawsuit and outlining their allegations in interviews with the Boston Globe, which is what I'm reading right now. They both allege state officials, including Secretary of Health and Human Services Marlou Sudders and her key aides, violated whistleblower and other laws that prohibit retaliation against employees who file complaints. Sheehan's lawyer, Andrew Couture, said the state also violated family and medical leave protections by firing Sheehan while he was on medical leave due to an emotional breakdown. Sheehan said he had become overwhelmed after months of working 20-hour days during the pandemic, forcing him to take several medical leaves in 2021. And so really I'm bringing this whole news article up not because of any specific issue in it, but more of the bigger, broader issues of whistleblower retaliation against those that try to look out for people inside of the military community, such as is the case allegedly here. And the person brings up that the person allegedly had an emotional breakdown, is what they're saying, from all the work-related stress and a toxic work environment, allegedly, it sounds like. And that is a very common problem problem for people that are trying to do the right thing and be ethical and all the different things, because they're not treated oftentimes, whistleblowers, with respect in these agencies. This is not the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. It looks like a state-run agency, but still there's a lot of similarities between the two. General in the Executive Office of Health and Human Services declined to comment on the allegations. Quote, "We don't comment on pending legal matters or personnel matters," end quote, said a health services spokeswoman. A spokeswoman for the Inspector General also declined comment. The allegations from Sheehan and Scheffler raised questions about whether state officials fully learned the lessons of the spring 2020 COVID outbreak in Holyoke, where veterans at one point were dying so fast that administrators brought in a refrigerator truck where bodies could be stored. A certified nursing assistant already has filed a federal lawsuit, and there's a clickable link on that, which I'm not going to click right now, on behalf of dozens of fellow workers alleging they face, quote, "inhumane conditions," end quote, as the virus swept through the state-run facility. After the outbreak, Healy brought criminal charges against the former Holyoke Superintendent Bennett Walsh and the former medical director, alleging they put elderly residents at risk by combining sick and healthy residents with dementia in the same unit because of a staffing shortage. A judge dismissed the charges in November. Also a clickable link right here, which I'm not clicking on right this second. But Healy has appealed. A few months after the Holyoke outbreak, Governor Charlie Baker selected Sheehan, who was then acting superintendent at the Chelsea Soldiers Home, to oversee the homes in both Holyoke and Chelsea. Sheehan, a former Marine, and I apologize if I'm butchering anyone's names. Sheehan, a former Marine, previously spent 3 years as a public health regulator for the State Department of Public Health. In his new job as Assistant Secretary for Veterans Homes within the Department of Veterans Services, Sheehan quickly became alarmed at the poor health precautions he saw in Holyoke. And it's going on to basically about like personal protective equipment not being properly used, public health safety procedures weren't being taken allegedly, saying that he brought all of this up to basically supervisors and was rejected, ignored, saying the proper policies weren't in place in order to train people and to keep people safe, essentially. And then it goes into basically how he was terminated, and he's saying that it was a retaliation essentially for whistleblowing. And it was also done while he was on medical leave, trying to recover allegedly from the toxic work environment and what was going on. So another part of this I thought was interesting was about patient records, saying that they were not digitized and they were instead allegedly in paper, and that they were allegedly piled high on the floor in Chelsea, sometimes in no particular order, and that he had to go to a medical records room basically for a family of a patient that passed away. Quote, "It was utter disarray. It looked like a paper mill exploded," end quote. So he's saying that he raised concerns about vacancies, the nursing shortage, staffing shortages, and safety issues related to that, and saying basically the retaliation continues and individuals trying to ruin his reputation for bringing up all of this. Caitlin Clark, a nurse who resigned from Holyoke Soldiers Home last week, said safety practices have not really improved at the home. Infection control is inconsistent, she said, and administrators continue to rely on agency help instead of hiring full-time nurses. So basically staffing agencies, I'm familiar with those in the healthcare industry. They're relied upon quite a lot, it seems like, at nursing homes and in hospitals across the country, because there's always been these nursing staffing shortages, which I feel like a lot is self-inflicted in this country, because I know that there are many people that have been trying to go to nursing school in years past, many years ago, and we're always told that there wasn't availability or you had to be a straight-A student and all this kind of stuff. And yet then there's all this complaining that there's shortages. And so I feel like a lot of stuff is just self-inflicted in this country and could easily be eradicated, but isn't. The Attorney General's office now has 6 months to respond to the claims contained in Sheehan and Scheffler's letter. If Healy doesn't respond or denies the claim, Sheehan and Scheffler can then file suit. Sheehan and Scheffler are looking for state officials to acknowledge that they raise legitimate concerns and to pay damages to compensate them for being wrongfully terminated, according to Sheehan. Caitlin Clark, the nurse who used to work there, said that, quote, "I wouldn't have quit if there was a slightest bit of hope," end quote.